So pledge allegiance in the moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Commissioner Kane? Commissioner Walk?
Here.
Commissioner Campbell is absent. Commissioner Walls?
Here.
Commissioner Algieri is absent. Commissioner Tama?
Here.
And President Poyer.
Here. The presentation, or you mean next, actually, we're gonna add a presentation here. Nathan's gonna talk about signage for the township, going into all the little towns. If there's anyone that wanted to add to do public comment about that, since it wasn't on the agenda, let me know. And then also, we're gonna talk about the zip code, down in the Mount Vernon, Boston area. Just again, early discussion about possibly switching to an Elizabeth, zip code. So if anybody wanted to get to talk about that also, let me know. Okay, we'll start with, Nathan.
Okay, so, am I here? Okay. So recently, over the past few weeks, I've been working on a side project for all the local communities. These include Buena Vista, Mount Vernon, Greeno, Boston, Little Boston, Blythedale, Industry, Blaine Hill, Smithdale, Highland Meadows, Howland, Arrowhead, and Stony Brook. The plan is to give these communities recognition for all the great people that you are in the community. We really want to show appreciation for you all, and we thought it'd be a good way to get back to the community. So I have a list of just about nine templates of the signs. I think if you ever want to, if you want to give them out, so you guys don't see.
You guys want to pass this around, take a look if anybody's interested.
No, you have yours, yeah, you do, everybody has theirs.
Yeah, they all, everybody has.
Are those mine?
And so the plan here is to give about 2 main entrances for each community. So when people are coming in, they can notice, hey, this is Green Oak. It was established at 1790, and you know, we welcome you, and it'll give some recognition to you guys in the smaller towns that you should be proud of who you are. We have a map over there if you guys want to walk over and see. It's on the front table right there of the obviously subject to change locations of where signs might go. I've run into a few problems, that being the establishment dates of certain communities. That information has been a little bit tough to find. I've gone through the Historical Society, but unfortunately they weren't able to find that information. So if anyone has any input on that, it'd be great. Other than that, I think I have much else to say. Any
Comments or questions from the commissioners?
You mentioned you were having trouble finding some dates as to when these communities were established. I'm assuming that you talked with the Historical Society. I don't know where, anybody else think of who he could speak with?
Ordinances?
Say it again?
Maybe some of the ordinances?
Old ordinances.
Yeah, some of those old, maybe.
Wow.
Those started
Boy, you could get
1973.
that in the basement. Oh, man. Might never come out.
Yeah, I was just,
The real tree.
One of the suggestions was to talk with Mary Wallace, the tax person. I found out what the oldest building in that zone is, pursuant to lack of her community. The only thing with that is, use Greenock, for instance, it has 1790. We know 1790 because of that log cabin house. 10 years ago, we didn't know that log cabin house existed.
That's right.
So, that's the only hiccup with the tax situation on trying to find that. We might have to just go with, you know, just as one of the suggestions, maybe just when Elizabeth Township was founded, that's being the existing name for that community.
Yeah, that's true. What do you think, Scott?
Historical Society for sure.
He's already, yeah, he's worked through there already, but yeah, they
Bunch of
only have
things.
certain
I
information.
actually have a historical map of all of Allegheny County that was done up on the old lithograph, hand-drawn maps, 1863, that I just found in my father-in-law's basement. So I'm in the process of scanning that at work now. More than happy to give you the whole thing, but I'll forward that off to you guys. It actually talks about the old parcel owners and stuff, and like I said, that's 1863, and we've been here longer than that, so.
It'd be great.
The
Yeah.
other thing you look at, there's a resource called, I believe, Sanborn maps, or they were created for fire purposes. You can look this up online. It might not be official, but they are historical documents.
What'd you call it?
I believe it's called Sanborn maps.
Sanborn.
Yeah,
Sanborn Company out of New York City.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll get that one too, thank you.
Across the street and slightly downhill from Mount Vernon Dairy, Mr. Val Steinman had a home, and he was a landscaper, and so it's quite the populated piece of parcel. But his house went into disarray and is, needs to be torn down, but they found a log cabin inside of that. So that would be an interesting parcel to look up, because that's an oldie moldy one there. That would be Mount Vernon.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there any towns that you think we missed in Elizabeth Township?
What's that?
Is there any little towns you think we missed in Elizabeth Township?
No, I think from what I saw, like I said, the 1863, all those were the same names at that time.
Is it Dravo in there where the Dravo Cemetery is?
Dravot, there used to be a little town called Dravot down there in the bottom, yes. Little minor town, yes.
What was the name of that little, coal town?
Dravot.
Well, it was.
That was that was actually all the Dravot property.
Along the trail, there was another. String town, that's right.
Okay.
Hey, that was a nickname more than anything.
Probably for
Yeah.
Dravot.
Maybe
Yeah,
next
it
time
was
we
the
go- we
Dravot-
didn't go also?
Yeah,
We should.
the goal was to
Yeah.
go along the bike trail.
What's the difference between Boston and Little Boston?
So, so when I was looking at the whole greater Boston area, if you wanna look, that whole thing, is just too large for one community. And only to have two signs would be a little bit, almost, it just wouldn't get the job done. And I think a lot of people from, at least that I've heard, do consider themselves, like, when they talk about where it is, they go, oh, Little Boston, and then there's Boston. So I broke it up into two parts. Obviously, that's subject to change, if anything.
Okay.
Never heard that before. It was two different. Huh.
That's the high school, though, I don't know.
Anyone want to comment on the different signs? for the
Mike.
That's the one I
You
forgot.
pick
Question, do we want to go this way or this way on the signs?
Oh,
Is there a difference, Paul, for how they stand up? And then one last long, if it's.
No, it's just, you know, the way they're laid out, because
this is really great. Good job.
Thank you.
My personal opinion, I like the landscape, because it's different than most of the other signs that we have. Cut it this way, all sides are this way. This is unique, and it comes up that way.
Oh, landscape, you mean turn sideways?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, for landscape. The other thing is, I kind of like the black. I mean, it's kind of our school color. This is my opinion. Maybe a little bit more bolder font.
Definitely bolder.
If that's the case. And then the other two things was, you know, that Faith and I were kind of struggling with. If you look, just look at what's being said on these, I know it's kind of far, but one says, welcome to Greenock, and it has the logo. The other one says, Elizabeth Township welcomes you to Greenock. Is it redundant because in the logo it has Elizabeth Township? But that's the only thing.
Yeah, when he did this at our house with us, when he did it with my wife, and we both did it separately, but both ended up choosing the less is more, like
Yes.
welcome to, because we thought too, when you're driving, less is more, because you're just seeing it, you know, in that
That's what
step.
I was gonna say, the less it's on the sign. the
Yeah,
better
exactly.
for-
So, yeah, we ended up both choosing, I think that design right there, the white with the welcome too, but again, the thought was, on our end too, I'm sure Nathan brought this up, is that you could do like a reflective white, so at night, like the black, yeah, I'd be worried about the black just at night, because you may not see it, but I'm sure there's ways you can make it reflective or lighted. It just depends on what you wanna do with that.
Well, what's your opinion on black signs or white signs?
The lighter the better. It will be all on your lettering, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
If we did, had an example of a little bit more bold, or like Jason has here, I mean, and also imagine, the thought is, it's not that size. You know, the thought is it's a speed limit size.
Yeah.
So you-
Oh, it's just gonna be much larger if you.
Yeah, it's not that size.
Yeah.
I mean, the ultimate goal is to make it the size of a speed limit sign. But, yeah. the
You
goal.
can see that really well from over there.
Yeah, and then imagine that being 3 times bigger than that. I think it would definitely stand out. Now, whether you want white or black,
Any comments, crew?
I like that. I like the black, and I know the white, but I can't see the black lettering on the white. But I can see the white lettering on the black, and if the white lettering is reflected, does it matter if we can see our logo, or does it matter that we can see welcome to?
good points. Thank you. Anybody else? Fred, what do you got in your mind, man? You always got something to say.
I like
Oh, we got your tough time.
doing something.
Greg, get from that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my dog was working. I personally like the bigger font than the white sign, and I agree with Matt that less is more when you're driving. So I think I like number 9, which was a black version, but I would like a white version of that, so that's my vote. Number 9 was I don't know if they're numbered on your printout.
They are not, Greg.
They are not.
Is that the one that says
It
welcome
just
to?
said, welcome.
This one, he said that one was number 9.
Okay.
Yeah, it has the bolder font.
We could make it even more bold than that. This is just, you know, standard line.
Then, like you said, you get the design you want, you give it to a sign person, they'll fix it up so it's, I mean, the size, the letter size, the font,
Right.
everything, it's.
Sounds good. Any other comments? Thanks, Nate.
You'll tweak the design a little bit, confirm where the location is, you'll just keep.
I would
working
tweak
on
that
stuff.
design
Okay.
on black and white, and let's look at that. Yeah. That'll make it
I'll
clear, too.
continue to work. We still got some trail stuff to work on too as well.
Next is public comments, Russell Vervanik.
Russ Burbank, I just had a couple quick questions. A while ago, it was talked about everybody getting 55-gallon recycling bins. Is that gonna happen?
I just signed the grant paperwork about a week and a half ago, so yes, it is happening. So I'm not sure, Greg, do you know a date for when we're looking to get those, the recycling bins?
No, I know you just signed it up, but I haven't heard anything about the funding yet.
Okay, so it's a little bit longer, but it's definitely going through. So I just signed with the county for that.
Okay,
So
good.
Kurt, I would do a quick comment on that, Russ. So currently going through negotiations, Shaycock's going through negotiations with, building the bid for this. And so that bid will go out mid-2023 to institute 2024. Now, because of the size of these containers, that's gonna change the bid for Elizabeth Township, even though it's a combined 23 municipality bid. Whoever gets the bid will have to do it differently in Elizabeth Township, because that'll be a much larger container that they'll have to have a truck to pick that thing up and put it in And so I don't expect to see this instituted until '24. Say, Greg, does that sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Sorry, I thought I was on mute. Yeah, that does sound about right. The quote we got for the bids was through Waste Management, so not only do we have to wait for the funding to finally end up in our bank account, but, we're gonna then order over 5,000 receptacles. And that's probably gonna take a while, just from the supply chain point of view. But Commissioner Walker's correct, they'll have to change their whole truck operation in order to accommodate these.
Okay, then my other, question was, we bought that computer system to do the road condition survey. I was just wondering if that system had been used yet?
Greg or Paul, either of you comment on that?
Greg's been working with that with,
The Canadian Mill, or?
yeah, the interns have been doing it.
Okay, so, Greg, any updates on that?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear the question.
It was for the, road surveying software that we got. Just
Oh,
where
so-
we're
yeah.
at with that.
So we bought that about a year and a half ago. It's called robotics. They gave us an extension on our, on that, contract till the end of November, I believe. It's close to the end of the year. And Nick Algieri is currently working on that. It's very, very weather dependent, so, the conditions during the day have to be overcast, which is not that hard to do in Pittsburgh. There can't be any sun, any hard sun or hard shadows on the road. It'll mistake it as a defect in the surface. So, he has about 3 neighborhoods done out of maybe, a dozen. So, he's on his way. Every time he goes to do it though, I mean, he's on track. So, here's our goal is to have it done by the end of October. Get it to robotics at the beginning of November, and once they get all the data, they'll analyze all the roads at the same time and give us our final list. So, a little too late for this year, obviously, we've already signed our road contract, but it'll be, perfect for next year's.
Okay, so it should be done by like the end of the year then?
By the end of the year, should be finished up, Greg?
Yes, sir, yes.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Patty Hoffman?
Okay, I have a couple things. One of them is taxes, but there's a few things in with the taxes that we're
Okay.
talking about. I'm sure you're gonna get to this, but everybody knows that, we probably need to increase taxes, but what do we get with the increase in taxes, and how are we going to tell everybody what we're going to be getting and what they're going to get for their taxes? Another thing would be, the 24-hour patrol that we just did down in, Douglas Run and Nichols Hill. Who paid for that? How did that come out of our taxes, and how do we?
Olympus was paying for that.
They do reimbursement.
Okay, so we'll see that on our forms. The things that you put out every month to show how that is.
Greg, do you know how that will show on there? How does when Olympus reimburses us, where will that show up? On our budget?
They normally just send us a check with a memo of what it's for, and then we'll put it on with, whatever account that is in QuickBooks. Does that answer your question?
Patty, I can make a guess at it. So this is police will tell them how many hours they spent. Olympus will write a check. It'll go into the general fund under police budget, whatever line item that might be.
But we won't have specifics.
You won't be able to really see it unless you start digging into the budget.
Okay, so if we did a right to know on, then, to find the checks that.
Oh, to
then
see how
that
much,
would-
see how much it is?
Yeah, to kind of get an idea how much they're gonna be reimbursing our police department.
Okay. Hey, Greg, rather than go through the right to know, why
That
don't
should
you
be
just,
fine, yes.
yeah,
you might wanna wait, because by the time the bill is generated, like, it doesn't happen the next day.
It's a couple, 3 months
What'll happen,
now.
yeah, by the time the police generate the invoice, then it goes to them, and then they write the check back, so the documentation probably won't be there, there'll be a lag time, just so you
How
know.
much lag time do you think there is, Greg?
Maybe a month at the most.
So just a thought on that.
Okay, so I could do that later then. The fire levy tax increase, I'm a little bit worried because every time we do something with the fire levies, then I think they stop getting as many donations as they used to get. And that, because I listen to people all around me and it's like, well, if I've got to pay a levy tax, then why should I give them a donation? So I'm just worried that it's gonna not, it'll give them money this way, but it won't give them money on the other end. So you've got to think about that.
You bring up a very good point, and we have 2 men here that are here tonight that might be able to comment on that, like right now, if you would.
Sure. I can tell you from our experience with the fund drives that we do, we only get about a 23% return from our residents that we send out. When we did to my knowledge, when we did the initial, I guess, fire level, we did not see as much of a decrease in our funding from our fund drive. And that being said, really what it comes down to is people that aren't contributing to the fire service or that kind of, in some ways, get forced to contribute to it, so it's spread out more equally amongst the residents.
So you guys like it that way, getting more money on the fire levy side?
All around, it's just better for us, it's easier, it's more, I should say, fair.
Okay. That was,
Okay, this is why we're having these workshops now, so we can get this out there early, so we can get feedback.
okay.
On both
And you
sides.
had a question to start with, which was, if we do raise the millage,
Yeah,
what would the residents get for that?
right. And they will ask, you know
Off
that.
off the top of my head, Jacktown Bridge, $650,000. Again, off the top of my head, Stony Brook, how much?
100,000.
That's all? Okay. How about Forest Hills Road? What's that number gonna be? That could go to $1
They're
million.
gonna look at road, you know what they're gonna say.
Did
you've
you
got
see our
people in all
stormwater
these-
list?
But you've got people in all these communities, and the stormwater lists are gonna be, well, why aren't you getting money back from the government on that? Why are we paying for it? It's not in our neighborhood. I mean, you know what's gonna be coming, and it's
you're
gotta
right.
be, you've gotta give them something more than we just fix these roads. You've gotta be able to tell
What a
them,
dog
we
park."
have something better for you. Dog park's not gonna do it either. I mean, it's gotta be stuff that's going to actually mean something to the community. And you know, everything's not gonna mean the same thing to same people, so it's gotta be widespread. It's not, okay, here's what we're gonna do. I mean, you know, this is our plan. We're going to fix the recreation building up at top of the hill here, and or something. I mean, you've gotta give them things that are tangible to them. Road repairs are not a tangible thing for tax increases. Seriously, it really isn't.
But we still have to pay the bills.
I know we have to, I understand, but there's people that say that doesn't affect me, what
Yeah.
do I get?
You're right.
And that's
So-
why Commissioner Tone is really bringing up recreation these days, trying to do more with recreation too. That's just one of many things, but this is again why we're putting out there early. We want feedback both ways.
Yeah, you've gotta put it out there where, you know, you can have like a discussion with more people besides the little bit of us that show up at these meetings and things. Because people are, anytime there's a tax increase, you have the ones that I don't want it because I can't afford it, because some people won't be able to, and I'll go back into that in a minute, but the ones that say, fine, we understand there needs to be tax increases, but if we do a tax increase, then what do I get for it? Give me something tangible besides roads and all that kind of stuff that, again, should be getting paid for from grants coming in, is what is in everybody's heads, okay? And I forgot what the thing was, I said I'd get back to it.
Okay. Yeah.
Just curious, is there something you'd like to see in the community?
That I'd like to see?
Is there something that you feel that would be worthwhile to raise taxes for? I'm just curious, actually.
It's a good question.
I'm just wondering.
Me personally, I would like to see our building finished up on the hill. I would like to see places for the community that they, whenever you had the comprehensive plan, where the community was sitting there saying, we need things for the seniors. We have nothing for the seniors. We need things for the people that are in their 20s and 30s, because they like to do stuff along the trail and they like to do stuff along the river. So what's for them out there? What's going to improve this for them? So it's got to go to every particular group. You're into the kids. So, I mean, and everybody says there's nothing for the kids. We know there's things for the kids. You just have to promote what there is for the kids in our township. But then it forgets about the rest of the people, and all I hear is there's nothing for me to do in this township. I have to leave the township to do this, to get socialization, to do these things. So it's got to be a broad thing for everybody. My thing, I'd like to see a lot of stuff along the trails. I'd like to see a lot of stuff, along the trail towns that people coming into our township could enjoy and bring us money, because we need to bring in money. So all those kind of things, those are important to me, to see places for that to happen. I was on the bike Yahoo thing on Saturday, and it wasn't a ton of people, which is a shame. But then again, like people in the township are like, well, what's in it for me? And if you went down there, there were a couple of booths, and there was you either ride the trail or that's it. It's got to be stuff for everybody, Josh. There's too many people out there that feel like they're being left behind in the township. They really are.
Sounds like this is comprehensive plan stuff, Eric, where we need to start working on this.
Yeah.
All right.
And I have, well, I did have one more. Can't remember what it was.
Is
But,
it the zip code?
yes. Thank you.
And this is early stages of just putting it out there way early to figure what's.
Oh my God, as soon as you said that, I thought, that is notifying every single bill, every single person, your driver's license, your insurance cards. I can't even imagine, I can't fathom all the things that we would have to do in order to do that. And there's gonna be people that aren't gonna remember everything, aren't gonna understand everything. I can't, that one is just like mind-boggling. We don't like, sometimes, some people don't like that it says McKeesport zip code, but we like the fact that we have a zip code, and this is all on all of our important papers, whether it says Boston or whether it says McKeesport, it's still on all of our important papers, including our deeds and everything else. You change that. Are you guys going to provide
Again, this is
for
what.
everybody to
Really
get all
early.
this changed?
Yeah.
They're not, you're not, and there's gonna be people that aren't gonna be getting mail, and there's gonna be people that aren't gonna remember to change that.
I don't think is this working?
Yeah.
I don't think people won't be getting mail. I mean, the mail would know that, hey, this is being there, it would be forwarded from.
You're
that
gonna get
point
a
on.
forward.
So
Alright.
it would be forwarded on there, and
Yes,
eventually,
but-
so, if I can finish.
Yeah, you can, that's what I said, but, so get me flat.
So with that being said, we have also too, when you're doing those kind of things, and you're doing a bill, when you do your bill, you just change your,
It's not quite that simple.
when you're doing your driver's license, when it renews, that's the only time you need to do it, is when it renews, there's a place there to edit it, and you put it on there. We're not the first community to actually do this. Jefferson Hills just did it, not too long ago.
When Jefferson did, they kept the same zip code, but just changed the name.
That's
That
correct.
could be an option also.
And when I lived in, this was 20 years ago, I lived up in Bailey Homes up in Mount Vernon, but I had a McKeesport address. I actually put down Boston, 15135, and my mail came
Well,
every single time. Even
it
though I
isn't-
had McKeesport out, the zip code is what matters.
It's the zip
So-
code that matters,
So
right, but if you
we don't
change the zip
that,
code,
I don't think I think, like Dan said, that the zip code would stay the same, and over time it would happen, unfortunately, or fortunately, I am for it, I would be for it. I think a lot of people take pride in where they live, and it's not to knock on McKeesport or anybody else, but when you live in Elizabeth, you want to be in Elizabeth, and we had something with our newsletter just recently. We hired a company to go out and promote and try to get as many businesses as we can, and they left out an entire community because they thought it was McKeesport, because it says McKeesport, so oh, that's not Elizabeth, and we had to reopen it up for invitation, just so we didn't eliminate that community. how many other times has that happened where maybe that section is being, overlooked just because of the name? And I think that's why Jefferson Hills did what they did as well. And I think that it's something to at least talk about and explore.
It's already Boston though. I mean, you have the option of using Boston or using McKeesport. That's already there.
Right, so why not?
But
make
it's
it
the
a
zip
third
code,
one?
but you can't change it to a different zip code.
That's not what we're saying, but like Dan said,
We'd be like Jefferson Hills, keep the zip code and change the name.
But it's already, you have that option with Boston or McKeesport. Because a lot of the stuff, when you go into the post office website, it shows up as the Boston Post Office, the Boston branch.
That was up in Mount Vernon.
So my address says McKeesport, 100% McKeesport, without question, without doubt, I'm McKeesport. I'm from McKeesport, I'm a Tiger, once a Tiger, always a Tiger. I love I'm very proud of my community, everything else. But now I live in Elizabeth, I'll probably die in Elizabeth Township. But I'm not gonna say that my opinion on this can't change. I agree with Commissioner Tuma, I'm actually supportive of this. But when I ran for commissioner, there's one thing I actually ran on, was the zip code. And I'm not going to discuss all the stories, I'm happy to, but like, I don't wanna talk for an hour. But, you know, there's a direct impact on businesses. There is a direct impact on businesses in our township that have a McKeesport address. Again, I don't know if I have the right to share all the stories because I wasn't told in a way that I'm gonna tell the public. But let's just say a business in Mount Vernon, Bobby Bauer runs a daycare, correct? She ran a daycare. And she had a real issue with people from McKeesport wanting to bring their kids to her daycare. Well, the problem was, it's too far of a drive, it just didn't make sense. People from Elizabeth didn't want to take their kids to a daycare in McKeesport. And she told me this story probably 10 different times. She just told me recently, I was just at her house. And all I'm saying to you is it created confusion for her business. Without question, she felt it was a problem. Not because she hates McKeesport, but because it's confusing. I have a story on my phone, a woman who lived in Mount Vernon Apartments, who had a 2-year-old daughter. I can share it, I'm happy to share it. Fell, and the woman just moved there, and she wasn't from the area. So when she was on the phone with the paramedics, they said, okay, I'm going to send, you know, we're on our way. You live in McKeesport. And the girl on the phone said, I don't live in McKeesport, you know? So there was a hesitation or a conflict on where she actually lived because she wasn't where she thought she lived in Elizabeth. I'm saying to you that there is aggravation regularly with the address because it's just confusing. I actually believe in my heart it impacts home values. I'm 100% a McKeesport fan. I will say that. True, proud. But if I call the police, I get Elizabeth Township. If I call EMS, I get, you know, EMS Southeast Regional. If I call fire comes, it's proud Elizabeth Township, you know, firefighters. My kids go to EF school, and however, I can't say that I'm the same as Dan, and I can't write Elizabeth next to my address because it will confuse people. I'm from Elizabeth. Why can't I do that? So there's definitely push on both sides, but I think it's definitely worth a conversation. And that's what we're doing. We're having a conversation.
Well, like I said, go to the USPS website, and it'll tell you it's
That's
Boston.
now. So,
So it says Boston.
No, there's
So
a
it really-
process,
There's a
there's
process
a
to start.
process
Right.
through them that you request a change.
But Josh,
So
we're
saying Boston or leaving McKeesport on all of your mailing stuff because it takes months and months and months for it to change.
We're gonna make this discussion item number 1. Josh, if you wanna just read that kind of list of reasons why.
Yeah, so
and this
there's
is-
a report, and I'd be honest with you, I don't know what CSR means, and according to Google, it means, CSR is a corporate social responsibility, it's a government report, okay? And, I was looking at this a lot when I ran for commissioner, and I found this report, it's literally a government report, it reads like 1-2, it's very long, you know, drawn out. Here were some reasons that it said, it just says problems caused by misalignment with municipal boundaries. I'm just gonna read again because President Porter asked me to. And I'm not saying these are all accurate, I'm not saying they all necessarily affect our community, but here are some reasons that some communities do this. Higher automobile insurance rates for drivers who live in the suburbs but are charged city rates based on their zip code. Residents who are confused about where to vote in municipal elections because they do not distinguish between their voting and mailing addresses. Sales tax revenues rebated by states and cities where they are collected are often misdirected because they are collected by merchants with zip codes in different jurisdictions or by merchants who mail their products to customers known only by their zip code. Citizens being sent jury duty notices when they are not eligible to serve based on their actual residence. emergency service vehicles being misdirected by confusion over what town a call has come from based on mailing address information, or homeowners in an expensive neighborhood complaining that their housing values are diminished because their mailing address has placed them in a less prestigious community. I didn't write that, but the bottom line is it's been talked about. This is an ongoing discussion. And you know, I'm very proud to live here. I'm very proud not to own a business here, you know? And I'm excited. I think Elizabeth has a great future, and I want to be part of that. And I think obviously I think everyone here does too. And I support this. I do. And my opinions fluctuates. I mean, you give me solid arguments, but I think changing addresses and stuff to me is not that big of a. It's going to cost money. It's going to be a headache. It's going to be confusing. But you know, again, the arguments, the constant confusion that has been going on for so long. Maybe not for residents lifelong, but for new people. You know, maybe we can once and for all put that behind us and just say, hey, I live in Elizabeth. Not I live in Mount Vernon of Elizabeth of McKeesport. You know.
But you have to go with the post office.
I
Our post office is
yeah,
the Boston
I got you.
post
I
office.
just-
If you say Boston, that's fine, you have your Boston zip code. Anybody can change things to Boston at any time because it is a true, honest change. But if you change the zip code itself, then it's a
I
major
don't think
issue.
we're gonna change.
No, not changing the numbers, Patty, it'll just be a name.
Yeah.
And you can't change the 15135 to Elizabeth because believe it or not, 15135 also goes into Whitehall. So you've got,
Jefferson Hills went through this process, it was always clear, matter of fact, when I first moved, into Jefferson Hills, my insurance rates for my car went way up because I was declaring an address even though it was in Jefferson Hills. That's what people are experiencing here. Josh has gotten, based on where he lives, you know, a lot of feedback about the change. It's not something we're gonna look into.
if you said Elizabeth Township, if you can talk to the post office and get us instead of Boston, get us in Elizabeth Township, 15135?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would have a problem with that
Yeah.
because everybody wants to live in Elizabeth Township.
That's
and-
kind of that's what.
Okay, so well, that was the whole thing, please don't change the numbers, because that will, it doesn't matter right now if it says
It'd be
McKeesport
tough
or
to change
or
the
Boston.
numbers. It's
Okay.
not fair. Yeah, we're looking to just change the.
I just
name.
want to write 123 Mount Vernon Drive, Elizabeth Town, you know, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
I do that on things, you know, when people need to know where I'm at. I write down Elizabeth Township. It doesn't matter, because they won't know where Boston is anyway, so if they, you know, you go like Elizabeth Township, that's fine. It doesn't matter, because it'll get there with the
The
zip code.
official address is what it is. So
Yeah.
since this was on the agenda, is there anyone else who wants to make any comments on this? Paul? Okay, you live over there.
Well, you know, there's 6 different zip codes
Okay.
for Elizabeth Township.
Yeah, but here's what I'm reading, Paul. It says, it talks about this process to
I
change
was
zip codes. Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, I don't think we have to do that, because what it's saying here is like, and this is like Google research I'm doing right now, but whatever. So the zip codes, you can make a petition to actually change zip codes, so it would be like, let's change all of this township to one zip code, that's a process. But it says a compromise solution to that does not involve changing the delivery structure. It's using an alternate city name in the line of their address while not changing the zip code. This situation most often occurs when one or more communities fall within the boundaries of a single zip code. So I think what we're talking about, you know, just
Yeah,
changing the name,
Just changing
yeah,
the,
if that's possible.
keeping the number the same, you know,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
So Paul, we have the regular 15037, we have Greenock is what, 15047, then there's.
018 Buena Vista,
Oh,
then you have, Sutersville
okay.
and West Newton. So you're pulling 2 from out in Westmoreland County, actually.
Yeah, when I lived on 136, I was thinking that just.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
So it's like,
Glidedale and Victory, I think is Sutersville,
Okay.
and Smithdale 136 is all West Newton. Just,
So
I mean,
something to put up more than just Mount Vernon, let all these areas think
Yeah,
of what they
it's an
want to
interesting
do.
conversation for sure.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to have like a representative from the post office?
we need to get a hold of the manager of the district office, is what this is
I
saying.
think it probably alleviates some of Patty's concerns with what she's saying.
Whole
Kind of
key
tell us
is
the process.
Key is get public input, do people want to change?
Yeah.
You know, majority rules, what does the public want? So,
But I mean, just for information.
yeah. Okay, any other discussion on this?
Just like, I think changing the name would probably work out unless you have street name conflicts, like High Street if there's a high street in McKeesport as well as in Elizabeth Township, then I think the post office is gonna have a little trouble with that. Even-
Would be
Maybe
about,
with the
they ought to
difference in
zip
numbers, I don't
code
know.
first, I think, right?
They should.
Well, it's, the street name doesn't really matter, because there's 4 Oaks in Elizabeth Township.
Yeah, no.
Okay. There is. Wow.
Okay. I mean, it's something I think we need to discuss further and get more information on, so. Okay, next discussion, sanitary budget and cost, Commissioner Watt.
We had a meeting tonight down at the Boston, Buena Vista Sewage Treatment Plant with Dennis Obiani, and just unfortunately he had to leave, time constraint. Also attending with Billy Matlock, who's the man in charge down there. Also attending with Commissioner Kane, Commissioner Poirier, and myself. And it was basically to try to get some understanding for budget purposes as to what kind of costs are going to change once the force main project and the pump stations are complete, and when the plant is finally decommissioned. We have a basic understanding due to a conversation that Dennis O had with Kevin Cray today about the time frame of that happening. And we've really come to the conclusion that for budget purposes for 23, we're not going to change a whole lot because we're not real sure as to when this will all happen. It might not be until third quarter of 23. Perhaps the pump stations will be ready to roll in second quarter of 23. But the overall budgeting effect is not going to be that great. It was a good conversation, but it's also pretty confusing at times as well. I don't know how much, I really don't know how much money that we can guarantee we're gonna save initially. We won't really be able to tell until 24 when we're fully operational with the new force main project. What else can you think about?
So for years, we've been reactive. You know, sewage line breaks, we fix it. Emergency rates have cost us a lot. So one of the things we can do is budget more upfront for proactive. You know, cammering and lining some of these main lines we know, you know, for the storm sewer, especially leaking in the sanitary sewers.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why we're spending over $100,000 to have Happy Hollow cambered, cleaned and cambered. And as Mr. Cray said earlier tonight, that eventually after they look at the video of this, they'll be able to recommend a proper course of fixing that line, so to speak. And it's 4,800 feet long, and as Mr. Craig mentioned to us prior to the meeting, that there may be some good sections, there may be some not so good sections. Very expensive to line, so we'll have to make a plan. But that's important. It's really important that we do some preventive work. We had, just as an example, we had a breakage on Lincoln Hall about 2 months ago. It was only about 15 feet of line that caved in, but unfortunately it was 25 feet deep, and it was $25,000 to fix that thing. So that's the kind of craziness that can happen with the old sewage lines. The other thing we wanted to do at the plant was to start to get some idea of what Veolia's position is going to be, what we're going to require of Veolia after the sewage treatment plant is decommissioned, and that was a good discussion. They're already thinking ahead about where they're going to move their offices, because the office is going to be torn down sometime in 23. Overall, pretty productive meeting, I thought. You know, it was just, for budget purposes, it wasn't really very helpful.
Yeah.
I'm trying to still muddle through on that, but we'll figure it out.
Also look at the equipment they have, if there's anything that DPW could use or what we could possibly sell. There's equipment coming up in the near future we'll be able to start selling off, they're not gonna need anymore, so we're starting to look at that also.
That's all I have.
Good. Any questions, comments? Okay, thanks, Kyle. Next would be Chief Walter. I don't know if Chief ever wants to come too, or no? Or- Okay.
Commissioner, would you like a update on the engine first? Is that where we wanna go?
Yeah, either,
Okay.
yeah.
So I actually just got a little bit more information today about that engine. For those that don't know, the engine that's out of the central station had a catastrophic failure of the frame. Almost a month ago now, we found it during a routine inspection of the vehicle. Since then, we've been in contact with the manufacturer of the vehicle as well as a couple outside parties to look at our options. Right now, as of today, the options that we pretty much have is repair of that apparatus, which is gonna cost the neighborhood of a minimum of $75,000 to $100,000. At the absolute earliest, it looks like February to get that truck back in service, if we go the repair route. If we go a replacement route, the fastest we can pretty much get a truck at this point is looking to be about 600 days, so about 20 months. That's just with supply chain issues, that's what we're running into. We have looked at the used market, look at options for used. Unfortunately, most of the vehicles that are out there are pretty much just in bad shape, if not worse shape than the vehicle we currently have, at probably even more money than just to fix the thing. So at this point, that's pretty much where we stand. I did look at the warranty issues. Of course, Pierce's manufacturers fighting us on that because they don't want to pay for it. I don't know if we're going to have very much luck with that because the main cause of it is corrosion, which is pretty much separating the frame. Unfortunately, in my opinion, it's a very bad design. I did talk to Chief Cotton. They have a truck that's a year older. It's pretty much going down the same line as this one is. So we're still looking at options. I'm probably going to call a meeting my membership here within the next week or two and try to make a decision on which way we're going to go to fix the issue at hand. For the time being, we have an engine from our Blythe station up at their central station because our central engine is the busiest. The only piece of suppression apparatus we have in Blythe right now is a F550 with pretty much a portable pump and a water tank. It has about a third of the capacity of the normal engine. Unfortunately, that's pretty much where we are.
Chief, what's the price on a new truck compared to paying 60 to 100,000 to have this one fixed? What would a new truck actually cost?
So the identical truck to that one right now, the estimates we got are about $800,000 to repair it. We did have a line that we thought on possibly a demo one, which is pretty much a truck that's already been built. That kind of fell through. The price I got from that company was $900,000. So they will vary a little bit based on manufacturer and what you're getting. But they're gonna stay around that $800,000 mark.
Okay. The trucks you have, we've been merging departments. This might be a dumb question. Can we have all the trucks out, like for example, Central, be able to service all the other areas or no? Or is it just too far?
I personally think it's too far. I think there would be other modifications you have to make to be able to do that. The biggest issue is that you have to consider is when we get activated for a call, 90% of the time, our guys are coming from home. So if you have, for example, firefighters in Greenock, and they have to run all the way to a central station, and then go back to Greenock for a call, that's a lot of time, especially once they're coming from home. I mean, you're probably gonna end up going to response times in the 20-minute range if you're trying to do something like that to our outlying communities. NFPA, they have recommendations and guidelines, as well as the insurance office to kind of set your insurance rates for your homes and businesses. They recommend a little bit different aspect of it, but the insurance office wants an engine every 1.5 road miles. We're not covering that now. There was a study done, I believe it was called the Orange Study. This is actually even before my time, I believe in the late 90s, that back when we had 8 fire stations, and they actually recommended building a 9th fire station out by the high school. So now the NFPA, they said theirs a little different. They break it down between rural, suburban, and urban communities. We're kind of sitting on the cusp. We're in the suburban range, but we're a little bit outside of the rural range. Their recommendation is to have 10 firefighters on scene in 10 minutes of the incident. From the records that I've been looking at for most of our fires, we're only meeting that about 20% of the time now.
Just do the less numbers.
Well, yeah, decrease in numbers, response times, distances. Pretty much in order to hit that 10 personnel on scene in 10 minutes, I have to have 3 fire trucks on scene in that 10 minutes. And normally the first and second we can get there, the third one's not normally coming within that 10-minute time frame.
Any questions?
Chief, Thank you for coming before the commissioners and giving us this wonderful news.
Oh, trust me, it was great news to me.
This is really concerning, and certainly your commissioners are not gonna be able to help you make this decision.
Yeah.
We are not, and, nor are we going, I don't know how we can help you. I know, it would be nice if we could write checks and just say, okay, here's $100,000, go get it fixed. Maybe if we raise taxes, that's one of the things we could put on the list.
Well, I actually have a presentation for you guys too,
Good.
for some of the fire levy stuff, and one of the things you're gonna see in there, and probably the concerning point is most of the recommendations of those trucks get replaced every 15 to 20 so years. That truck that failed is over 20 years, and most of our structural firefighting fleet is over that 15 years now too. So we're seeing massive failures. Right now, I have almost a third of my fleet out of service with maintenance issues. I've got 3 of my 10 vehicles out of service with maintenance issues right now.
All major ones or just mine?
Pretty significant. The one squad we ended up just flat out selling because they had a blown engine in it. It was worth more in scrap than it was for us to repair it. So it's being replaced. Unfortunately, with the supply chain issues, we've been having trouble getting new vehicles. The second one obviously would be this engine here that's out of service for an extended time, and the third one is one of the attack trucks down at Glidell Blue Turbo. So it's out for probably a week or 2 while it's getting the turbo replaced.
What's an attack truck?
So it's pretty much a smaller engine. A normal engine will carry something around the neighborhood of 1,500 feet of 5-inch supply hose, a 1,500 GPM pump, and multiple tack lines, things like that. A tack truck is a smaller vehicle, more like an F-550, so you can think of like one of the smaller road department dump trucks. It's got generally a flatbed on it. It's got a small portable pump on it versus a direct drive from the engine, and a smaller tank. So it's not nearly the capabilities of a bigger engine.
Chief Evans, can you comment on your state of your vehicles in Blaine Hill?
Yeah, our first piece out is a 1994 Pierce. It's a combination of a ladder truck and a pumper truck. It's out for repairs right now. It's out for general maintenance inspection. We're praying there's be able to find anything. But that truck's a 1994. That's the first piece out. For us to replace that truck would be well over $1 million.
Wow.
And that's why we support that increase with that fire levy, you know. I mean, the last time the township increased taxes was in 2001, I believe, when they put that in that. Then we were getting a pumper for $250,000. Now, you just said it's $800,000 just for a regular pumper.
Right.
That hasn't been increased. We have not gotten an increase.
Yeah.
Just a set of bunker pants, and a coat, $3,300. I said that to you. I was shocked, even I can't believe how much prices have gone up just in that amount of time.
Right.
It's crazy. I mean, the struggle's real, dude. Everything's just, you just see it sitting here with, the police cars and dump trucks and everything else, costs going up. Increase is gonna have to come across the board somewhere.
John, I saw Cotton yesterday, and he felt pretty confident that his frame was under a lifetime warranty. But I think wasn't the cost of lifting the truck up, but it was the cost of fixing the frame. Which he said, lifting the truck up cost $30,000. But his wasn't as significant as what yours is.
So for I haven't actually looked at their truck, just conversations that I had with them. Their frame is kind of in the precursor of what our frame saw. Our frame saw at this point, might as well say a complete failure. Their frame isn't to the failure point yet, but they're pretty much heading down the same road that our engine went. Since the trucks are pretty much identical.
Warranty though?
Well, they do have warranties on, but what Pierce is telling me, and from my understanding.
Who's Pierce?
Pierce is the manufacturer of the truck.
Okay.
What Pierce is telling me, and from my understanding from talking to Cotton, they've never even contacted Pierce. So I think they're going somewhat of a different route, but I'm not sure. Pierce is telling me that it's not covered under the warranty because it is a corrosion issue, which is exempt under the warranty. So the option I did have in the conversation I had today is that what we're waiting for from Pierce, unfortunately, is the local repair shop for Pierce refused to work on the truck because it's too extensive of damage. They want to send it back to Wisconsin to repair it to the refurb facility. What we're waiting on at this point is because it's pretty, I don't want to say it's a rare occurrence, but they only have a couple guys that work on frames. They want to send him out here to determine what materials and stuff they need, get an estimate on the job, get pictures, things like that, and then order all the parts and then send the truck to Wisconsin. But from what he's telling me is that they can send it through the warranty department, but he feels that the chances of that actually happening are very slim. And the other problem we're gonna run into too is if we try to pursue any type of legal action, it's probably just longer that truck's gonna be out of service.
Have you talked to any attorneys at all?
We have not at this point now.
Maybe we could just have an initial conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll find that there's lots of people out there having the same problem.
Well, from my understanding, it is actually a fairly common problem, but it's also my understanding that Pierce hasn't fixed any of them under warranty yet. However, they did stop building the frame like that after a couple of years, which is kind of interesting.
Any other questions or comments on this?
If you could just talk to Cotton and see how he's,
Yeah,
Just
I gotta get a
have a
clarification.
stop.
I've gotten two different answers, so I gotta find out. I know they originally had voted supposedly to send the truck out to a third party to get it fixed, and then apparently the warranty stuff come up, so they were potentially reevaluating it, but I'm not sure where they are at this point.
Alright, thank you.
Then you have the presentation on the, fire.
Yeah.
We're gonna get that next, if you'll go do your presentation first. Did you want Chris to dim the lights back?
Yeah, first one.
Thank you. Yeah.
Do that actually plugged in, John?
Yeah.
Power wise? Because sometimes they won't broadcast the sync monitor unless it is power.
Yeah, no, it's all plugged in.
See if that works.
Great, can you hear us, Jay?
No, I can't, I heard that, well,
Okay. It's kind of, nothing's going on right now, we're setting up the projector. So it's been silent for a couple minutes now.
okay, when John was talking, he was fine at first, but.
Okay, yeah, he's setting up the projector, so we're all good. It'll take another minute.
Okay, thank you.
There we go. Back cord.
Hey, John.
Yes.
Comment to Greg on that. Is that big boy Ethernet cable the problem?
It looks like it is.
So Greg, did you hear that? Tell him what's going on.
Looks like the Ethernet cable's not connecting very well, Greg. That you guys have here.
To the phone?
Yeah, well, to the. my laptop.
HDMI cable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like.
I'll have to pick up the new one.
So generally in the fire service, the volunteer fire service here, we're seeing a couple big challenges. The biggest is probably our membership decreasing. We're seeing an overall increase in our call volume. When I first joined the department, back in 2000, we were running about 200 calls a year. 200 calls was a busy year for us. Currently, our departments are running about 450 calls a year, so we've almost doubled in the last 20 years our call volume. Some of that's a little bit because of mergers, but in general, the call volume's going up because where we used to go to help other departments out, we're not going quite as much, which has kind of helped our department out, remove some of the wear and tear in our apparatus. But the bigger issue is becoming the decrease in availability of time of our volunteers. People just don't have the time that they used to have. The volunteer amount of time that they have to put into volunteers is just not there anymore. Two family working jobs, people working 2 jobs on their own, the time's just not there. The funding is the other issue we're running into. Just a little discussion we had right now, you can see how much the funding increases. Bingos and ticket sales that bring in $1,000 here, they're just is not covering our costs anymore. And then the other thing we're running into is a lot of competition. So back in the day when volunteer fire services first started, we were pretty much the only game in town. We were the center of the community. We were the only thing in the community. We held all the dances, we held all the events. We were the community. Now we're competing against all different kind of things. We had a bingo a couple weeks ago, and we were competing against another bingo to raise money for cats. I mean, nothing against cats, but you can see the competition that we have. Sure. Same thing with craft shows. We had a craft show this past weekend. We were competing against another craft show somewhere else. There's just not enough time in the year to have these events spread out. So we're competing against everyone else. And then inflation. The cost of vehicles, as you're going to see here shortly, has just increased exponentially, along with our gear, our turnout gear, everything. So the fire departments are primarily funded in 4 different categories. So as you know, we receive some tax funding, we receive donations, we have our own fundraisers or have clubs, and grants. So we only have 4 ways that we can receive income. Our major expenditures that we see, and probably our biggest, is going to be our capital items, our apparatus, our fire stations, our major equipment. But we also see major expenditure issues in things like maintenance, our utilities to maintain the stations, our personal protective equipment, and insurance. So some cases to point, like this is the piece of apparatus that's currently out of service. It was purchased in 2002. It replaced a 1974 2-door engine at the time. We purchased it for $256,000 at the time in 2002. So this would have been the first year that we received our tax money. At that time, it took approximately 9 months to build the unit. Currently today, in 2022, it would take me about 2 years to get that vehicle. Would replace a truck that's 22 years old at that point. The replacement cost is $800,000, and it would take me 2 years to get it. This is our ladder truck in the township. It was purchased in 1999. It theoretically replaced an old ladder truck out of Boston that was retired several years prior because of pretty much maintenance issues. We couldn't maintain it or keep it. Fortunately, they were able to purchase one that year. They purchased it for about $330,000 at the time. Currently, same deal, it takes about 2 years to get it. The current replacement cost, if we added the pump to it to try to save some money by reducing our fleet, would be about $1.5 million currently. And it would take about a 2-year build time. Now, guidelines out there for replacement of apparatus. So the National Fire Protection Agency recommends all fire apparatus over 15 years old be replaced from first line service. They say that we can keep them up to 20 years old as a reserve apparatus, but they do recommend substantial upgrades to those trucks during its lifetime, which generally we don't do at this point. The Elizabeth Township Fire Department, number 1 specifically, and actually Dan, I think you might have been involved in this. We had that DCED come in and do that study. So they recommended in 2015, they did an apparatus study for our department. At that time, they recommended 5 of our apparatus be considered for immediate replacement. Currently, that's the status of those 5 apparatus. 2 are still in service, 1 being that engine, which is out of service with significant downtime. 1 was replaced, 1 we completely removed from service, so inside with the department we downsized. And one is removed from service, weight replacement, so that was the truck we had the blown engine in. It currently has a new truck. I'm hoping maybe to get it in the next month here. Just kind of depends on supply chain issues at this point. So as you can see, the longer we keep the trucks, the harder they are to maintain and the more out of service time they have. We also go off of maintenance cost, the availability of parts. So one of the issues we find with these trucks, because they're generally fairly custom pieces of apparatus, we can't find parts to them. The ladder truck that you just saw was out of service, I want to say it was March or April of this year. It had an upper engine failure, you might as well call it. They had to custom build the part. They actually had to go to a machine shop to get the part made for it, to custom mill it. So it was out almost a month trying to get that part made because they couldn't find it. And then the other thing with the fire apparatus, they're a little bit different than personal vehicles. I know a lot of people with personal vehicles, they look at the mileage on the apparatus. With fire apparatus, a lot of times we look at hours over mileage because the trucks have significant idle time on fire scenes. The engines actually drive the pumps of the apparatus. They drive the hydraulic pumps for the aerial apparatus. So it's a little bit more than mileage when it actually comes to the apparatus needing replaced. Some of the department DCED consultation recommendations, they actually recommended, because there's no specific guideline, like a point system they call it, for replacing fire apparatus. They use the American Public Works Association Vehicle Replacement Guideline. And this is some of the recommendations in general that was in that report. They recommend that all these engines and rescue engines be replaced every 20 years. They actually recommend the trucks be replaced every 15, the rescues without pumps for 25, attack vehicles 15 to 20 years, and the squads every 12 years. In 2015, DCED recommended that we needed approximately $20,000 at that time to maintain our fleet for replacement for the next 20 years. However, that did not take into account the 3 loans that were currently already on apparatus that we had. So here goes some issues with some of the trucks. We talked about that 140 truck had a catastrophic failure with the motor. We had to tow the vehicle out for repair. We couldn't find the parts, and the truck was actually had to get a custom part made by a CNC shop. Right now, unfortunately, I didn't have the information that was up here when I first did this, but obviously we have a frame issue. We can only find 3 companies that are capable of repairing it at this point. One is it going back to Wisconsin. The second one is a combination fire machine shop out in Greensburg. And the third one, which Buena Vista found, they're sending it to one company to remove all the firefighting aspects of it, then sending it to a truck shop to get the frame back together, then getting it back to the original shop to get the fire equipment put back onto it. Right now, I can tell you from the estimates we have, the minimum repair cost is going to be $75,000 on that truck. I know this isn't very clear, it's a little bit smaller, but this is some stuff that we've been working on as far as replacement costs right now. 3 trucks highlighted in red are over 20 years old. They include an engine, a ladder, and a squad unit. We do have 2 squads currently in production to replace 2 of the ones we have. But as you can see, if you look at the top there, those are our major apparatus. So we got 2 of those in the red. The next engine there has already hit 15 years, and the one right behind it 14 years. So realistically, in the next 5 years, I already have 4 of my 5 major pieces of apparatus at that replacement age. And then the lower part's just some of our smaller support vehicles. They don't necessarily contribute a whole lot, but it's still a cost. Based on today's pricing, if you would look at there's a 25-year lifespan and a 20-year lifespan there if we try to keep the trucks. At the 20-year lifespan, it would cost us $285,000 a year that we'd have to put just towards apparatus capital replacement. So that's our major apparatus stuff. So here goes what it would cost to put a firefighter in turnout gear. So there's prices there: helmets, hoods, turnout coats, turnout pants, flashlights, a couple little miscellaneous items. So every firefighter needs about $4,400 worth of gear. That gear expires every 10 years. So after 10 years, realistically, I'm not supposed to use it anymore. The SCBA's that they wear, so that's the air tanks on their back that they can breathe fresh air, that's another $7,000. Those need replaced every 15 years. The portable radios, unfortunately, the price for those keep going up, and in order to get them fire rated for us, they're about $4,500. So that's about another $11,300 every 15 years right there that we have to replace those two pieces of equipment. In order for me to put one firefighter in a building, it costs me over $15,000 in protective equipment just to put one firefighter in a building. That does not include the cost of us training them, physicals, fit testing, and the physicals and fit testing, while we're supposed to be doing them, we don't have the funding to be able to do them currently. This gives you some, unfortunate picture, once again, it's not very clear, but this gives you an idea. So this is some of the other major pieces of equipment we need and the lifespan of them. Fire attack hose, supply hose, $250 for a 50-foot section. Generally, one of our engines carries, I give you the neighborhood, about 3,000 feet of hose in order to do its job. Nozzles, hydraulic rescue equipment, so like Jaws of Life is the generic name for them. Anything from phone, gas meters, a thermal imaging camera right now, if I go buy an NFPA compliant one, is $15,000. The life expectancy of most of this equipment is 10 to 15 years. We do annual testing on our fire hose, and generally every year I have about 10 sections that fail testing. So talking about testing a little bit, pretty much all the major players, including the insurance office, which your insurance rates kind of go off of. We're not necessarily required, but recommend we do testing annually on equipment, and it pretty much helps with our insurance rates and saves the community money. So we have to do testing on fire hose, ladders, pumps, both portable and aerial ladders, as well as SCBA flow testing yearly and hydrostatic testing on the bottles every 5 years. It adds up to approximately another $18,000 a year just to do the annual testing on it. So some of the major maintenance items that we have, 142 truck, which is Blaine Hill's truck, just recently had some master cylinder issues. Those are the main elevation devices on the vehicle. 140 truck out of Green Oak had major motor issues. We currently know that we have frame issues with both Central and Buena Vista's engines. TAC 3 is currently out of service with a blown turbo. One of the squads had a blown engine and it was retired and sold. And on top of that, just some major maintenance items we have for the fire stations. Green Oak's fire station needed a new roof. We ended up going with an option that cost about $35,000 to repair the roof on the building. And we're currently addressing some moisture issues at our Blydell station. Chris, do you have anything else to add? Any other major maintenance stuff going on?
No, I can't keep going. Like I was telling you guys before, our truck's a 94, we're gonna run that truck until it can't run anymore. That's
Yeah.
what we do, we run them to the, can't pass inspection or just cost throughout places, so we run them until they're done.
Yeah, and I should also point out that $285,000 a year for apparatus replacement was just for my department. That didn't include the Blaine Hill and Buena Vista department, so you can kind of add that on into it. Just some comparisons on where we are as far as funding goes. Some of the local municipalities as far as their millage rates, and then the ones that are probably more similar to Elizabeth Township as far as first-class townships. And this is money specifically dedicated to the departments. Ross Draver's at 3 mills, they have 3 departments and 4 stations, so they're pretty similar. Penn Township over in Westmoreland County, 1.3 mills, they have 5 departments. North Huntington, their population's significantly higher than ours, but as far as the mileage and the stations go, they're pretty similar at 1.32. And then another similar one we found is Cole Township. They're out in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. They're at 1.75 mills. They're almost an identical population density to Elizabeth Township.
What's the value of their communities?
What's that?
What's the value of their communities?
Unfortunately, it ranges. I mean,
so like take Penn Township, obviously that's almost 3 times higher. It's at 1.3 bills, we 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
We're about 650 million, I think, is our
yeah, fortunately,
for half a mil, we're dividing up 365,000.
Yeah.
So 1.3 may not be the same value as 1.3
Correct.
here.
Correct.
So-
Yeah, and just like,
I mean,
just like.
it might be valued at $1 billion.
Yeah, and just like, I'm sure probably the boroughs and
$3
stuff like
million,
that are
who
probably gonna
knows?
be
That's what they
significantly
are.
less for a mill. Unfortunately, I don't have the access to
Yeah.
data to be
Yeah.
able to kind of pull
Do
that.
you know how much they're actually billing for that 1.3?
Not off the top of my
To
head.
divide up?
Yeah, not off the top of my head. I do know that the populations of all of them except for North Huntington were actually less than the population of Elizabeth Township.
Okay.
So everyone always kind of wants to know what alternatives are. So quite honestly, the alternative, and actually in some ways our reality right now, is we have pretty much unreliable, unsafe equipment that's increasing our liability as officers and departments. We're burning out our volunteers at a staggering amount with fundraisers, training, and the call volume, which is generally leading to a decrease in our volunteer numbers. A further decline in our volunteers is going to lead to increased response times and decreased staffing, which, as we talked about earlier, we're already kind of at the lower side of our response times and our staffing, which will lead to decrease in funding in the department because that's less fundraisers we can do because we have less people to do those fundraisers. So the other options, probably where it's going to come to, is we're going to come to a closure of stations, the loss of apparatus, or a fully funded career department, which is going to drastically increase taxpayer money. Any questions?
I appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
So that's a small short of it. I mean, I do appreciate that. I mean, I know last September I came here for those of you who were here and asked for some better communications, and I definitely think we've gone that with the Public Safety Committee. But I do think you guys, I want to make you guys aware of what's going on in the fire service.
I'm glad you did it. We've talked a lot over this past year with our meetings, and I know it's definitely challenging. Greg Butler, are you still on the phone?
Yes, I am.
So if John sent this to you and picked out a few of those communities, it'd be nice to see what their actual revenue that they're actually receiving for fire departments, because he brought up, 1.3 bills, 3 bills for this one, and I'm just called, I don't know exactly, but it'd be nice to see how much they're actually getting for 5 stations, because that's kind of like what we are at 5 stations, if that makes sense. And then it gives us better, and then the other thing is leasing. Is that an option for us, for instead of going after these $1 million trucks, can we lease, 10-year lease, and then get a new one at 10 years, And maybe something along with this fire levy thing that we may be, hold on one second. So with this fire levy thing that we may be discussing, it could be, okay, we can lease, here's our lease agreement. This is gonna go for leasing new vehicles, hypothetically, but is that even an option?
Yeah, there are departments out, or the organizations out there, I guess you can say, that will lease vehicles. The biggest problem, the reason why we haven't done that in the past is we don't have the funding stream to maintain a payment on an apparatus. That engine that's out of service was paid off 9 years ago. So that gives us the extended life to be able to run them. We didn't have the money to immediately go into another payment to continue to afford an apparatus. Plus those payments are generally increased because you're replacing them so often.
So if they're, with the fire levy thing, that could potentially.
Yeah, that would absolutely be an option.
Depending on what the lease payment is. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's $500,000 a year for,
Correct.
over 3 years, I mean, we might as well just buy one.
Yeah.
Any questions for
Hey.
Chief? Yeah, Greg.
Yeah, real quick. Hey, John, I sent you a text to send me that presentation if you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and then what I'll do is, if you'd like, I can check the valuations of those communities.
Yeah, if you have access to that, that's fine. Just the stuff I was using through DCD and stuff to pull those evaluations, they didn't have amounts or anything like that.
Yeah, I can find that information out, I think, and then we can do some real comparisons.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Stick around for a minute, if you don't mind.
So yeah, tonight, so we just want to kind of put this out there and get a feel for what people's thoughts were on, property tax and fire levy tax increases. Obviously, there's reason to do it, there's reasons not. Patty brings up a great question, I guess comment, what do we give back to the public for this? What do we show them you know, not just for the fire department, but for the township, trying to be more proactive to do stuff. And, I don't know, when did we increase taxes last? Chris was saying 2001?
I think it was 2001,
I
that's
didn't
when
know
they
before that.
enacted the fire levy, that was the
That
last.
Oh,
was-
the fire tax, I was
that
gonna
was
say
fire
township
levy.
tax only 30 years, hasn't it?
36 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Greg
been
knows
30
what the
years.
fire, I think Greg told me a couple days ago, it was 38 years since the township has increased
That's the millage on the real estate.
on the real estate, yes.
The fire levy tax was 2001, so 21 years.
Right.
I mean,
That's just not good business. You have to raise it a little bit.
yeah.
Every year.
Everything I worry about, which, I mean, I'm actually for, and I've brought many times, I think we should increase the taxes. What I worry about right now is we just increased the sewage, and it's gonna increase even more this year. You know, so we gotta just weigh out for the elderly and make sure that we're, you know, not hitting them too hard too, but again, I think we need to increase taxes. So, I just want to get everybody's thoughts.
I use this example every time we start talking about this. First of all, 38 years without an increase in millage on real estate. Not smart.
No.
If you raise it a little bit every year, nobody'd say a word. We haven't had an assessment at the county level on residential properties in a long time. Well, that's due, but who knows when it's gonna be. Obviously, we don't wanna raise taxes. It'd be great if we had more houses to tax. Well, we're not gonna be doing that for a couple of years because that requires sewer taps that we don't have at this point. We're behind it. You see, these guys definitely need more money. I think our general fund could do a lot more, as far as taking care of a lot of these stormwater problems, if we had more money. So here's my example. My house is assessed by Allegheny County at 98.5. So round it to 100 grand. My Elizabeth Township real estate tax on that is $331 per year, $331 per year on 100 grand. If we raise the millage 5%, which would be hefty, but 5%, that's $15, $16. But yet 5% on an $8 million budget throws $400,000 into our coffers so we can get some more things done. I think we're crazy if we don't raise the taxes. And we obviously have to raise the fire levy tax, obviously. Look what these guys are up against.
What we don't want is that to go to a paid fire department. So,
As for the real estate, for me to go and try to raise taxes on the real estate end of it, you can look at it two different ways. It's been 38 years since we raised it. Were we too high 38 for the last 38 years? Because I'm looking at the budget and we got a surplus. We're coming to the end of the year and we've got a surplus in there already. And we have funding coming in from outside sources that we weren't expecting before that can be used for one-time costs. Just for the royalties that we're getting in. We're close to $1 million in royalties, and we're only in 8 months until, we still got 4 more months to go. So, and we were only expecting 160-some thousand, and it's almost $1 million. So, and even without that, we still have a surplus in funding. So, for me to vote for a tax on that, I would have to see, okay, what services are we gonna do, but we're not even spending the money that we have now that's coming in. Jacktown Road, I don't have to raise taxes for that. We're gonna be using the royalty money, I would assume, because we have it. That, CARES money act for, I think, 100,000, and the rest is going for that. The Stony Brook project that we just did, same thing. We had that, we budgeted that in. It's not like we're going to, towards the end of the year, we're $800,000 in debt and not have to be able to pay this. So, I think the board has done a fantastic job on spending wisely, whether it be police cars. I mean, some people have talked, oh, we bought 7 police cars. I think the most expensive police car was a 2-car package at $25,000 that we bought this year. And that was 2 of them for 25 total. So, you know, these are my opinions of it. If we were coming into a deficit, I would be more in favor of raising it, but as of right now, is what I see in the budget, and what I unless somebody has something different, can show me, I would be against it. As for the fire levy, I support the firemen. I think that, they definitely need funding for that. I don't know what that number is. They have a lot of challenges that they're facing, and I think having a recruitment push could help with that challenge. I mean, we're putting a lot of, how do you say, we're putting a lot of burden on a select few to come up with a lot of money to support them. And if we can come up with ways to help recruit and retain them, when you have numbers, they have the ability to, like, take the events that John was talking about. We just don't have the manpower to do the events that we were doing before. Well, if they grew their department, if they could, I shouldn't say it's on them, it's on us. If they were able to grow their department by 30% of active individuals, that opens up a lot of different other revenue streams that potentially that they could do. So, I mean, that's just my thoughts. I think I would be okay with the fire, depending on what it was, you know, what that number was.
What, can Greg give us a number that we currently raise now with what it's at, and then, you know, as we raise it, what we would raise in terms of revenue?
I believe we divide $366,000 5 ways. Technically 3, but it goes 5 because one department is actually 3 departments.
Yeah, that's a close number.
I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Yeah, that's correct.
As far as the township for raising taxes, one thing we gotta look at is, look at Happy Hollow. We camera that, was that 4,800 feet? That's gonna be $500,000 to fix probably. Jacktown Road was, what, 500,000-600,000? You know, Forest Hill Road is gonna be, you know, how much? I mean, these are all surprises. These are things that catch us.
Well, how many on the list, Paul? 68, 65, something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
60-some stormwater projects?
We have a surplus right now because we have been cautiously looking at everything. We've cut a lot of stuff out of, you know, what we used to spend on the past. And part of the reason is these projects pop up. If the money's not there, what are we gonna do? You know, again, we have to be proactive on some of these things. We can't just always be reactive, because we could get caught at some point.
Paul, let me ask you a question. You said that there's 68 projects, right? Hypothetically, I raise it $5 million. Everybody's tax, we can bring in $5 million more. Could you finish it by the end of the year?
No.
Could you finish it by the end of 2023?
No.
Could you finish it by the end of 2024? Okay, thank you.
Part of that's not a manpower issue, though. Some of those projects would need to have the engineer involved, be designed, and things like that.
And there's
Like, that, it's not just,
I don't disagree, I just wanna make sure we're doing our, every avenue. When we haven't spent the money we have, that's just my thoughts on it.
yeah, it's not like you can say we have 60 projects, get them done. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, there's permitting involved, there's,
Agreed.
especially when you get into stormwater.
Agreed, it wasn't a slight on you, it was manpower and permitting and things like that. I mean, you space that stuff out, you know, based off of all those characteristics and financial too as well.
Well, so here we go. I'll use sanitation as an example. The sanitation rates haven't been changed since 06 or 07. Kept the same. Balanced budget. Well, all of a sudden, here we go. Now we gotta raise the rates because we have to pay our PennVest loan. And it had to be considerably raised this year of 22. It's gonna go up again in 23. If we would have just raised it $2 every year, we wouldn't be in this pickle. And so we do have extra money in the general fund, 600 grand from CARES Act this year, 600 grand again next year, as you pointed out. We do have $1 million that has come our way via royalties. Geez, would that be nice if that would keep going for another 10 or 20 years? Who knows? Bad chance. I get your point, Chris, we do have a surplus, but raising it a little bit each year is a lot less of a problem than raising it a bunch when you finally need it.
President Sawyer, may I comment real quick?
Yeah.
I just want to let you guys know, I've been talking about this capital improvement plan. It's actually just a complex Excel spreadsheet at this point, but over the last year, I've been working on two things in tandem. One is a vehicle schedule, because we have a lot of vehicles, we have a lot of equipment that's getting old, whether you count mileage or hours. We have a lot of aging equipment in our public works and police department. And as far as the capital improvement plan goes, I have put together a pretty expensive spreadsheet, and I haven't included things like the expenses that Chief Walters just talked about, and I haven't included exact MS4, remediation measures that are going to be in the several $100,000. I plan to add those. I have notes on the side to add those to this plan. I haven't presented it to any of the commissioners yet, because it's not really in the proper format to really evaluate. But the only reason I'm commenting tonight, I feel fiscally responsible to bring this up, is that even what I have in there now is what I would call the low-hanging fruit for each department. It's like the public works bucket truck. Some of them we've already invested in, like the police, some of the police cruisers. But there's also, we're in dire need of another dump truck, on one of the big dump trucks at Public Works. My point being is that even at this low-hanging fruit stage, the numbers that I've spread these expenses out over 5 years, and this could easily be a 10-year plan also, but over 5 years alone, I'm already at about $2.5 million a year in capital investments. Now, some of that could be wrong, of course. Some of it could be that bucket truck will last 5 years. It might last 10 years instead of 5 years. And it's just a big chess game, as you know, right? We deal with a lot of moving parts. We have a lot of physical assets that age. I haven't included any sanitary in that, and I haven't included any stormwater in that. It's really just mostly vehicles and equipment at this point. So I've left out sanitary, I've left out stormwater, I've left out MS4, I've left out fire department. What else am I missing? Perhaps a new municipal building someday, or at least improvements, things like that over 10, 15 years, and we're already at $2.5 million. And I understand Patty Hoffman's points about the bright and shiny stuff. I get it, and that's what the residents want and deserve. But we do have this long history of neglect, is what I'm going to call it. And I'm not blaming any other boards. It's just a long history of neglect that concerns me a little bit, because I might be the keeper of all the wants at this point, and eventually I'll release that on you, and you'll see. But it's a pretty substantial amount of money. That's my only comment at this point. And I'm not advocating one way or the other. It's just the reality that we have to get into some kind of, like every township should, and most do, get into some kind of a capital investment strategy over the long term for other boards to follow, other managers, when we're all gone. It's the only way we're going to survive, and we have to be calculated, and we have to consider everything. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Good points, thanks, Greg.
Josh, what's your thoughts?
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate what Greg said, and I'm not against raising taxes. I'm not so much for raising taxes. I'm not going to say raise taxes just to raise taxes. I'm not going to say don't raise taxes because that's what I believe in. I think looking at the budget, comprehensive plan, of course, there's talk of a recreational center and other things you'd love to see in our community. I like to look at it like long term, kind of like Greg. I kind of like how you just phrased it. I'm not going to be able to regurgitate that, but I don't know if you call it like a capital improvement structure, or however you said that.
Strategy.
Strategy. You know, again, similar, I'm 30 years old, I wanna live in this township my whole life, so I have a long time hopefully to look ahead to. And, you know, I appreciate the fact that when I look out and it's snowing, I have people clearing my roads, you know. I appreciate the fact that, we have a pretty strong police presence in our community. I think that there are services that, you know, our residents, I don't wanna say take for granted, but that, you know, maybe other communities can't afford to provide for their residents, and we do. And then you hear from the fire departments that, you know, maybe response times are increasing. I mean, it's not their fault. They're lack of volunteers, and, you know, when your equipment's deteriorating, you can't just wish for a new truck, you know. And so, you know, I think Kyle said earlier, I would love for us to just write a check right now and solve their problems. I'd actually say, like, I'd support that. I know that wouldn't make sense on our end. Maybe Greg, you know, I mean, you know, of course Greg knows, like, you know, again, there's all these other issues, other problems, wish list items, but, you know, I mean, you know, supporting your police, supporting your firefighters, I just think that's kind of why I ran for commissioner. I care about the community, and without firefighters, without police, you know, I don't know, they're crucial. So for me, I think looking at the budget, I think it's a big deal for me looking at the budget. I don't want to say raise taxes just to raise taxes, but if you look at the budget and we have these wish list items, or you know, we have these increased costs, or we know that we need to, you know, fund capital improvements, etc., or we look at the comprehensive plan and there's things that we haven't done since it's been published. Yeah, I mean, we need to plan ahead, and if that means that what we feel the future of the township looks like, if we cannot afford to do it, what other options do we have? We also need to be pro-business and, like, invite businesses into our community. It's not just raising taxes. I mean, if we can increase the tax base, isn't that other options, you know? I mean, other than grant writing and other than raising taxes, if you can build homes and invite businesses, that is an alternative. And I mean, we're not very pro-business, I don't feel. I mean, I think we can be a lot more pro-business in this township, and I'm very pro-business. So, you know, that's my position on it. I think I would vote to increase taxes if it's put in front of me that we have to. So I would support it, but I'm not just gonna sit here and say, raise taxes. You know what I mean? That's all.
Thanks, Joe.
Correct.
So I'm all for raising the fire tax levy to get these guys what they need. The question would be how much? Real estate taxes, however you want to word that, I'm open for discussion.
So budget and finance is going through the budget right now. We've had, what, 5 or 6 meetings over the last month and a half. We've another next week. So I think we can kind of narrow this down and give you a recommendation from our committee, and then go from there. So I just want to kind of get a poll of everybody, where everybody was at.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for getting these guys what they do.
Okay.
Kyle,
Yo,
tax. What's projected time frame of us potentially being able to issue taps out? Because you mentioned that because of the pump station not being completed. Or when can, like Josh just said, more business, more homes? What's our timeline? When I'm a developer, I want 50 of them, when can I get them? Projected.
Sure. You're currently under a consent decree with DEP, and at that time, when it was issued a few years back under your long-term control plan, you to have Boston and Buena Vista operational by December 2022. Now, because of supply chain issues and some weather delays and some flooding issues during the course of construction, we're looking more towards February or March 2023. We have to start that petition to DEP to make sure that we can get that consent decree legally extended, so the township does not get into jeopardy. So once those plants are operational, once those pump stations are operational, that's when you can start to discuss getting your tap restrictions lifted.
And when is that?
February or March of 2023.
Okay. And then, but when you discuss it, how long does it take, once you discuss it, for them to say, yes, you can do it?
We've been having our monthly progress meetings with you for the whole duration, and we've been trying to avoid the iceberg. And I've asked Millie to provide me a schedule showing not only just a Gantt chart showing when they're gonna be done, but also tracking, this pump was delayed 1 month, or Buena Vista had flooding issues for 5 days because of high water during the key part of construction. So we're trying to get all that together and put it in a memo to DEP one time, just ask them one time, say, okay, what's the date that it's gonna be substantially complete? You don't wanna go back and get 2 bites of the apple from DEP.
So, pretty confident, spring 2023, if I wanted to buy 50 taps, I could.
Yes.
Like that answer, thank you.
That's good.
Which could definitely benefit, I mean, we're saying that we couldn't get taps, we couldn't do this.
Yeah,
I mean, we
I'm
might.
super glad to hear that, actually.
Waiting, if we're already under budget, way under budget, we have this money coming in for at least 1 more year, you know, for the township tax I'm talking about. So let's see where those taps go. I mean, when you add 50 homes, say they're $200,000 each, there's a significant amount.
Seems to me there was discussion about tax abatements.
There's something coming.
That's an ongoing discussion. Yeah, I mean, we're in the unfortunate position, you know, I represent a lot of communities, but we are in the unfortunate position of relying so heavily on residential real estate. We don't have a business tax base. And, in all honesty, you know, I pushed very hard for that, comprehensive plan to occur, because one of my thoughts on it was that we needed to develop a strategy on how to bring businesses in. And I don't think we should ever lose sight of that. I honestly think that the tax increases that we talk about here, yeah, we haven't raised them in 30-some years. I've always said for years and years and years, that is not a good thing. You know, people are like, earlier people on this board, as a matter of fact, would sort of pound their chest at that and say, hey, we've never raised taxes. And I would, in the back of my mind, think, yeah, but that's not a good thing. You know, that's a recipe for disaster, because, right, like what happens is, and you probably read it in the paper with sanitary rates over in Clairton, what happens is as you have to increase them, less people pay, which means you have to increase them more. So you have this same sort of snowball effect with residential real estate. You know, you don't want to tax out your base. So, and I'm not saying we would ever do that, but I'm saying that's where, when you rely so heavily on that residential real estate tax base, that's where your problem lies. You don't have that business tax. So if we, you know, maybe I won't even be here or whatever, but if this board and this township can focus on a rezoning plan, a business development plan, honestly, I'm not sure where that's at or what it looks like, but I think that's necessary for the long-term future of this township, in my opinion. You know, there's all this income and this money in Jefferson, and it goes the other way. It doesn't come this way, right? And like our people, like if they have to go somewhere to shop, they leave here, a lot of them. And if you could keep that here and that tax base and all that money here, we could grow. And it's alongside with residential development too. You know, I represent communities up in Butler County, and they are booming. I mean, they have so much money in tap fees, they don't know what to do with it, you know, because they're building plan after plan after plan. So we have to strategize on that end. I mean, I'm saying the tax thing will get you to a point, but I think as a board and as, you know, whatever committee that looks like, we need a plan for the long term. You know, sort of like what Greg said with a long-term capital plan in terms of what we want to do. We also need to look at a long-term sort of business plan, in my opinion, on the future of this township. So, I mean, I know it's a discussion for another day, another year, whatever, you know, it's an ongoing discussion, but I just think it's very important to really always keep that in mind. What can we do to bring business in and be more business friendly, as Josh said?
Thanks, Ben. Yeah. Commissioner Tillman, Act 172, rebate and earned income increase.
Yeah, so, we've been having some discussions in our public safety meetings and stuff, about being able to get firefighter volunteers, new ones. Retention has been pretty good, for the most part, but new has been almost at a crisis level, I would say, based off my conversations with them. Currently, there's what's called an Act, I shouldn't say we, the state of Pennsylvania has Act 172. And what that is they allow the state of Pennsylvania for townships to to be able to credit earned income tax back to volunteers based off a certain criteria that we determine. So meaning, so if I make $50,000 a year, our tax is 1% township tax on earned income credit. So I am that person, or I should say myself, I would pay, $500 on that to the township. This ordinance, the Act 172 allows you to go all the way up to 100% of what you pay to the township in earned income tax. So if I could get $500 back, if that was our ordinance, that's the rule of Act 172. It also talks about you can go up to 20% of the township real estate tax. So if my bill is $500 a year, 20%, I could get $100 back credit at the end of the year. So we adopted, and Cal, I think you were the only one on here, on the board at the time. We adopted back in, talked about it in 2018, signed it in early 2019. It was called Ordinance 937. And on the 937, I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's definitely able for right to know, and those that were here were there. Basically, we have a set of criteria, hypothetically, what should be hypothetically? 60 hours of service for the whole year, one call equals 1 hour, no matter how long they're there for. And there's some other criteria, whether it be fundraising and things like that. But the goal is to get the volunteers to work at least 60 hours. And if they did so, they could earn, we signed a resolution that they could get up to $250 back in earned income credit. Earned income tax credit to them if they met those objectives. Currently, the chiefs, they work with the township, Greg, to do that, and he works with Keystone to give them back their earned tax credit. Now, some of the stipulations that we have that we can adjust is, one, we can increase that amount from 250 to 100% if we wanted to, depending on what they make. It won't go beyond whatever you paid. So if I make $50,000, or we'll say $60,000, and we raised it to, say $500, that's all I'm getting. I'm not getting the full amount. Even I say up to 100%, after $500, or before $500. The second thing is I think is a hindrance on this current ordinance that we did, because right now it's at $250 per year is what we get. And I think, John, you said 46, if I remember right, about that. Is about how many actually achieve that. One of the negative things about this is it works for the retention as like, hey, here's a nice little payback, thank you for helping your community. But in order for you to qualify, you have to have 2 full years of active service in order to achieve it. So for recruitment, it's not a very good recruiting tool. So, if I started in February of 2023, I won't see anything till 2026 before I start actually getting it, because I wouldn't have 2 full years in until 2026 tax credit. So some of the suggestions that I would like to propose, and hope that the board could take a look, love the input back, was one, I'd like to increase it to $500, double it, so that if and that would be $500 per year. And the second thing that I would like to propose is, and I'm open to debate on this part, but I don't think the 2-year plan is a good plan for recruitment. I think if we could say, if you're an active member by, say, March 1st or April 1st of the year that you want to see credit for, would help. And what I mean by that is, say, 2023, I become a volunteer, say, March 31st, our date is by April first, hypothetically, I do my 65 to 70 hours worth of service at the end of the year. You know, I make, we'll say, $70,000 a year, I can get $500 back that year in a tax credit back to them, instead of waiting until 2027 to actually see it. And I think that would help with like new people moving in, or, you know, Josh is always looking for something to do, since he has all this stuff going on. Josh. But a new person that comes in the community or volunteers, they can, on the recruitment side, they can say, hey, this year, if you volunteer and you do this, at the end of the year, your township will help you with your tax and give you a credit back. Those are my ideas that I'd like to see maybe adjusted on that, and then I'm opening the floor.
Chief, do you know why we put the 2-year rule in there?
I do not.
Does anybody know why we put the 2-year rule in?
I do.
You were here.
I drafted that ordinance. That was put in there because there was a concern at the outset of this of people kind of like coming in and getting the tax credit and then for some reason leaving and not dedicating their service, or these guys, and actually I think the discussion came out more in Forward Township than it did here, but I ended up preparing the same exact, I did an identical ordinance, but I think that was one of their concerns over there, is they thought someone might come in, go on one call or something and then get the credit and then.
What's the 65 hours?
Yeah, well, that's what I.
65 hours.
Yeah, it's on your papers, it gives you an idea, and we'll just, just go over a couple. An individual must participate at least 60 hours of service for the fire department per calendar year in order to receive this tax. One of the other key moments is on here is 1 call equals 1 hour, regardless of the amount of time served, and that's on the actual ordinance part. But it talks about, or on here, number 6, calls will equate to 1 hour, regardless of the length. But it gives you, whether it's cleaning, whether it's repairing the vehicles, maintenance, doing the meetings, doing the fundraising hours, we're like, for them to be able to, do bingos and things along those lines. They each equal 1 hour, but I really think this could help with recruitment on their end, and I think it's worth a try. With 46 people doing it, you're doubling it. I mean, what's it going to cost you? 23,000 extra, or total 23,000. If everybody made $50,000 and more, you made it at least 500. Unless people want to go higher than that, that's.
I would go higher, but I like the idea of getting rid of the 2 years and starting the first year.
When you're looking at 2 years, why do you have any time limit at all?
That's what
I mean,
That's what I want to do.
If somebody starts in September, if they put in 60 hours, they should get credit.
Yeah, I agree.
You know,
That's my thoughts.
you're gonna get 1 hour for occurrence. If somebody goes in and works for 4 hours, they get 1 hour credit.
Yeah, we agree on that.
So I think, back to Matt's point about somebody taking advantage of it, if they put the time in and they quit at the end of the year, then they quit at the end of the year. I mean, they earned that time based off of that. And that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Commissioner Kane, what's your,
Yeah, I would be for increasing the amount to 500 and the time frame.
Same.
I'm for both of those.
I'm for that.
Yeah, of course I am.
Okay. Let's,
Matt, do you have any legal or questionary or procedural
No, I mean,
things that you want to map this out for
No,
us?
it looks pretty basic. I mean, we have to keep it at that flat amount. We'll just adjust the ordinance, make it to 500. And then the eligibility issue is even easier because that's in a resolution. I mean, we could theoretically change that at the next meeting. The ordinance will have to advertise to change that to the $500.
So that's how we would hypothetically vote to
Advertise.
Could you draft one by in time for
Yeah,
us to
absolutely.
achieve
Yeah.
for 2023?
Yep.
And the only other question is when do we want it to be active by? Is there an active by time? Or do we want somebody,
Unless you
what
want
I
to-
mean by, I volunteered in December and I did 60 hours, I did 30 hours a week.
If you take off the 2 years, then it just goes by the 60 hours. So as soon as they accumulate 60 hours, I just don't know who's keeping track of that.
That's okay if we just do it?
Yeah, absolutely, because hypothetically, I could get somebody in September, and if they would start their firefighter training, they would nail those 60 hours out before the end of the year without a question.
You guys keep track of that?
Yes.
Oh, okay, you'll keep track of the hours.
Yeah, we keep track of all the hours.
Our whole key is to get new guys in, retain the current guys,
And-
so
Yeah.
I'm all for this.
And then just, Greg, you also get that information and review that, correct?
Review what information?
The information that John and the other chiefs sent to you for that tax.
For the Act 179,
Yes, yes.
okay, yeah, we're good.
So they do go back and forth and make sure that it's audited correct.
Yeah. Okay, Kyle, Wilson Engineering, energy assessment.
Yeah, I'm gonna just go through this briefly because we haven't talked about this new board. Beginning of 2020, I think this started. Joel found a grant from PADEP, energy conservation side for $75,000, and it was to do a energy study on everything that the township has. And a group from Wilson Engineering, they have a local office, I believe it's in Oil City. They had a couple of fellows come down here and study the crap out of this place, and they wrote quite a detailed report. That report has now been put in the Dropbox, in the Commissioner's Dropbox, so if you'd like to look at it, that would be great. Don't get into any depth on it because it'll drive you crazy. But there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in there that we can start to do to save money. And interestingly enough, the big one was to change all the streetlights from sodium vapor to LED. Well, that's already been done. There's other places that we can save a whole bunch of money. And so I think that's some of the things that we need to start looking at a little closer. Sorry, President Port, but I didn't have a chance to review it, and so I don't have anything off the top of my head that I can say, hey, let's go do this. But
Basically, what we want to do.
I'd like to see this.
We're
everybody look
starting to
at it.
review this now, like Kyle said, we're gonna pick the low-hanging fruit, whether it be a boiler system, whether it be an air conditioning system, whether it be lighting, anything that uses energy, we have assessed through this grant. Now we wanna start implementing it and actually changing over this stuff to more efficient, equipment and save money in the long time by doing that.
Yeah, we're gonna get Paul an electric car because he drives around a lot.
That's really all it was. Any questions or comments on this?
I did look at that on,
Did you look at it?
Greg posted on the drive some time ago, and it was pretty extensive.
Yeah,
What
it is.
they did, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm pretty detail oriented, and it went way detailed to where I kinda got lost in it, to be
Yeah.
honest. So, you know, just like sewage, I trust you, Kyle. No, I'm teasing. No, I think it's a good avenue to try and do, just like our signs that we put up, you know, that were solar. You know, that was really our first, you know, avenue towards doing something, you know, for energy efficiency.
Any other questions, comments?
Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We did a few of those already. I haven't looked at that in a while, but we've done a few of the low-hanging fruit ones. And I also received an email today, we still qualify for I think a fairly large rebate once the pump stations are done, for the high efficiency pumps that we're putting in. So that's actually kind of a spin-off of that same grant, sort of. So I'll keep you posted.
Thanks, guys.
Next is motions. First, motion to approve the workshop meeting minutes from August 15th, 2022. Take a motion.
So moved.
Good. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Second, motion to approve the Pavlik subdivision plan as recommended by the planning commission. Chris, can you just give a quick explanation on
Yeah, this is a simple subdivision that kind of got lost in limbo since May from the planning commission. So it just never made it to the board for final approval.
this? With turnover in staff, it just kind of.
Yes.
And what is it?
It's just a residential lot.
Splitting or combining?
No, split.
And when they split, is it for two different structures?
I believe it was to sell.
They're actually closing on the 23rd of this month for the sale of the other
And
property.
where is it? I'm just asking a couple, I saw somebody get burned one time because we didn't ask questions.
So it's a subdivision
Okay.
separated,
Right.
one lot into two, because they're selling it off. It got basically put aside when, John had left and didn't realize until it came up close to a closing for the property. The realtor called us, that's when it's like, that's why it's being rushed on here, because we kind of dropped the ball.
Alright.
So, any other questions, comments? Can I get a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Okay. Next, motion to approve the condemnation of the following properties for demolition. 2322 Margaret Street, lot and block 1902-B-317. 2219 Ocean Street, lot and block 1731-N-123. 2141 Smithdale Street, lot and block 1731-N-217. 2078 Smithdale Street, lot and block 1732-S-237. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Can we talk about that?
You wanna talk about it?
Yeah, so what does that just?
These are the hearings, these are the follow-up for the hearings we've already had. They need an official vote of condemnation. Then what'll happen is I will send out appeal letters and we'll repost the property, giving the owners a 30-day, and interest holders 30 days in which to file an appeal to come please court if they so choose to challenge the condemnation. Once that time period expires, if no one files a challenge, then the properties are formally condemned and we can move forward with demolition.
And my question is, when we move forward, is that something that we've already budgeted for?
Yeah, it's part of our grant.
And we could potentially have this done by the end of the year.
Greg, you there?
It's part of the SACOG grant, year 48.
When do you think the demolition will be done by, Greg, is what Chris is asking?
I'm sorry, the question again?
Could they be done by year end, the demolitions, or next year?
No, I believe year end. Everything's in place except for Matt's letter.
Okay.
So we're waiting on Mr. Curtis.
No, I can't do the letters until you guys do this motion. Don't look at me. No, I need the motion, that's why I own the motion.
Not the first time we're doing that today.
Any other questions?
That's not what I meant, Matt.
I got it, Greg, no worries.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Okay, that's it. Can I get a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.